A black attacker versus Asian victim in New York in broad daylight, and nobody would like to help.
Community activists on hand to support two women who believe that attackers spit on them because they're Asian.
Hi, good day. Welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing fine today. And before I proceed with our topic for today, I'd like you to know that I'll be changing my channel name to a more appropriate channel name. And if you've probably seen my videos previously, you know that my channel name is Uncensored Asian, which I think is something that we need to change this time. So today I'll be renaming my channel to Anti-PC Asian. So anti-PC means anti-political correctness Asian. So I'm not a politically correct person. So for Filipinos who have probably heard this term, political correctness, PC is not about being, polite, about kind, about friendly. It's all about submission to the powers that be. So we don't have this concept yet, or in the Philippines. What I mean to say is that this is not popular yet in the Philippines. So the term or words political correctness, I believe that Filipinos probably take it literally. So it's not about being politically correct or being correct in political, way or sense. So political correctness is a concept invented and popularized and promoted, practiced by American and Western liberals, the leftists, the progressives, etc., because they know that this is a weapon. Okay, political correctness is a weapon that they can use to subdue or to defeat their opponents and to establish their own totalitarian model or utopia. And for those who have been following American and Western politics, you probably know that political correctness is all about political power. It's all about totalitarian dictatorship in the West in the name of being nice, in the name of being, polite or being politically correct. But you don't know that this is actually about power. It's about gaining power through cultural warfare. So this is a cultural warfare weapon that American Democrats and liberals have been using in order to defeat or to silence their opponents, in order to win the political game and culture war in the United States, for example. So we have the LGBTQ issues, the gender issues in the West, the Black Lives Matter. Basically, that is the best illustration or summary that I can give you about why I'm renaming my channel to Anti-PC Asians. And let's proceed to our topic for today. And we all know that the alleged killer of George Floyd, I'm still gonna use the word alleged, okay, despite the fact that the jury in Minnesota found Derek Chauvin. Again, Derek Chauvin is George Floyd's killer. The jury in Minnesota found Derek Chauvin to have been guilty on all charges. Okay, and we've seen so far online on Twitter that the liberal leaders like Pelosi, Maxine Waters. Pelosi, by the way, is America's House Speaker. Okay, she's the Speaker of the House, the third most powerful man or woman in the United States, including Maxine Waters. She is also, like Pelosi, a representative from California, and AOC or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and many liberals, white and black liberals, have celebrated this conviction, or the findings by the jury that Derek Chauvin, again, George Floyd's alleged killer, was guilty on all charges filed against him. Okay, but this is all about racial warfare. Again, this is about PC or political correctness. Again, I said earlier that political correctness or PC is the best weapon being used by American and Western progressives or leftists or liberals against their political opponents. It's a good thing that the leftists in this country, the media, and I don't know, communists probably, have not yet adopted this warfare tactic because political correctness is very powerful. So, if, for example, the revolutionary communists in the Philippines, led or being led allegedly by Jose Maria Sison, if they are waging what we call bloody revolution against the national government, against the current regime, or what we call status quo in the Philippines, American leftists, progressives, liberals, and communists are waging cultural warfare in the United States with the use of political correctness as their main weapon. So the umbrella is political correctness. The tactics they're using are, one of them is critical theory, okay? That's one of the weapons under the arsenal of political correctness. And we have this gender issue, etc. But that's going to be another issue, because today we will be reacting to this violence being waged by some people, one particular, okay, group of people or racial group of people in the United States. So we all know that we have this anti-Asian racism and hate in the United States, and unfortunately it's not being amplified by America's liberal fake news media, because they've been focused on the case of George Floyd and the trial or hearings of Derek Chauvin case over the past few months or weeks. And of course, we know that they used this case of George Floyd, the death of George Floyd, in order to defeat Donald Trump. And in fact, let me just show you before we're gonna react to the videos of Asians being beaten, Asians being, being beaten, being harassed, being violently punched or sucker punched by some Americans, okay? I'm gonna tell you about that after this. Some Americans that, we all know that these have been happening, except that American liberal media have not been reporting and talking about the main perpetrators. So let's proceed to that. But before that, I'm gonna show you Nancy Pelosi. Again, Nancy Pelosi is the Speaker of the House of Representatives in the United States. She's the third most powerful person in America. So we have this woman.
Thank you, George Floyd, for sacrificing your life for justice.
She's thanking George Floyd. If you don't know the background of Mr. George Floyd, he's a repeat offender. He's a recidivist, a repeat criminal who was harassing a young black store clerk. Okay, I've seen that video. He harassed that young black man after being caught to have been using a counterfeit $20 bill, and that's when he reported George Floyd to the authorities. So it's all started with one phone call by that young black man, harassed and violently bullied by George Floyd, a criminal, a black criminal. And George Floyd is being used by American liberal media as their weapon against their enemies, okay? And they're trying to pass him off as a saint when he's a repeat offender. He's a hardened criminal who went to prison multiple times, and he's a drug user. And according to testimonies in court, George Floyd was high that very moment that he was being arrested, and he was being arrested by the cops. Okay, he was high on, I don't know, I think it's fentanyl or some illegal substance. Okay, but he was definitely high on illegal drugs or substances that very moment. And also he was COVID positive. So he's the only COVID positive. George Floyd basically is the only COVID positive person who died and was not reported to have been a COVID death by American health authorities or CDC. I don't know, but you know, if he probably died that day without being arrested or without the confrontation with the cops, he would have been declared as a COVID positive death by authorities in Minnesota, right? So again, let's get back to this.
But because of you, and because of thousands, millions of people around the world who came out for justice.
Only your fellow morons in America are thanking the death of a black criminal, you know, because you use his death in order to defeat Donald Trump via a fraudulent election. We all know that. All right, now let's forget about this woman because she's nothing but a corrupt, you know, one of the most corrupt politicians in the United States. She's actually worse than any corrupt politician in the Philippines. The only reason why she's not being exposed is because the liberal media don't want to expose her.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury foreperson.
So we all know that despite the guilty verdict against Derek Chauvin, President Joe Biden and his fellow Democrats, corrupt and racist Democrats in the United States, still said, no, this is not enough. And because of that, a lot of Democrats and liberals and blacks still protested in the aftermath of Derek Chauvin's guilty verdict by Minneapolis, Minnesota jury. Okay, so let's get to the main issue, shall we? Because I tend to get derailed by this issue in the United States. So let's talk about, and I'm going to react to the black on Asian violence in the United States, and all of these criminalities against Asians were videotaped. They were caught by CCTVs or bystanders in these Democrat cities in America. So let's start with a video showing a Filipino American who was victimized, and he was knifed in the face. So let's check.
Administrative Assistant Noel
getting
Quintana was on his way to work last Wednesday morning, February 3rd, when he was attacked by another passenger who slashed his face from ear to ear while inside a New York City subway train.
He started kicking my bag.
But the harasser quickly turned into an attacker who left Quintana bleeding from his face, frozen.
So this guy is a Filipino American who hoped that he's gonna find American dream in the United States. So his name is Quintana, last name is Quintana. He's an elderly man who was knifed from ear to ear by guests. Okay, and why the hell the media refused to talk about the race or skin color of his attacker? Okay, because the attacker of Mr. Quintana is a black man, in solid Democrat city of New York. And all of this, incidents, all of this violence against Asians in the United States were done in solid Democrat states and cities.
Ah,
I thought he punched me, but I couldn't do anything when I touched my face. I saw a lot of blood on my hands. I screamed, help, help, and nobody helped me.
He was screaming, help, help. And he said, nobody helped me. And he was about to gasp and cry. He's still terror-eyed and obviously traumatized by this incident. Okay, so the main topic for today, if I didn't tell you yet, is why the hell nobody wanted to help these Asians being victimized and attacked by blacks in America, and I'm gonna tell you the reasons why after this. Okay, but first we're going to react to these videos. I'm gonna show you these footages of Asians being attacked by blacks. Most probably, my wild guess is that these black men and women in America who attacked Asians, that they were either registered Democrats or they're Democrat voters or liberals. Okay, so let's continue.
Father Julian Hagodelia, a Filipino priest whom Quintana volunteers for, could not believe that no one tried to help him after the suspect fled.
No one tried to help him.
Person. And for somebody to be attacked like that, and nobody went.
Remember, Mr. Quintana, a Filipino American, an elderly, was attacked in broad daylight in New York. Okay, in broad daylight by a black man, and nobody helped him. Okay, and this happened again. I'm going to reiterate because you need to listen. You need to understand that Mr. Quintana, a Filipino American, was attacked by a black man in broad daylight in a solid Democrat state and city. Okay, and we all know that the Democrats love to pretend to be people for the minorities, people who care for the people of color. But these people, the American Democrats, are actually psychopaths. If you're gonna check on how they behave online, how they attacked their political opponents, it's psychotic. Okay, you're gonna see in their eyes how hateful they are. They are liars and manipulators. They are narcissistic, vile creatures. Okay, whose only goal is to achieve power and to gain power, and they're trying to achieve power by trying to portray themselves as for the poor, for the people, for the minorities, for blacks and for Asians. And mind you, black Americans in the United States are being used as their political pawns. I'm gonna let you know that blacks in America are Democrats' modern day slaves. Okay, because the Democrats, they were the party of KKK, slavery, Ku Klux Klan, and segregation in America. And they're trying to have this, or to promote their switch theory, that the two parties, the Democrats and Republicans, have switched. And this is a lie, because if you're gonna ask them who switched, who actually switched, because if you know Al Gore, okay, a Democrat, and he's a vice president of Bill Clinton, his father, he was in politics. His father was in politics for decades, since the segregation in America, and they did not switch. They did not switch parties. Okay, they did not switch parties because these people are manipulators. They're psychopaths. They're liars, and they're trying to claim that they are for the minorities, they're for blacks, they're for Asians, in order to keep their power. And if you don't know yet, creepy Joe Biden, creepy pedo Joe Biden, or Joe Beijing as I would like to call him, is an unabashed racist. Okay, he's a friend of Robert Byrd, okay, who was a KKK member, who became a senator, who then became a friend of not just Biden but also of Hillary Clinton. Okay, so I tend to know all this because I do my research. Okay, I've been studying American politics for years, and if an American liberal or Democrat is going to debate me, I'm gonna make sure that it's gonna get destroyed, because these people don't know anything. Okay, all they know is emotional blackmail. They're trying to play your emotion. Again, these people are manipulative psychopaths. So let's continue. As I said earlier, okay, Joe Biden is an unabashed racist, a friend of a KKK member who became a senator, a Democrat senator. So they claim that there was a switch. But Robert Byrd, a KKK member, did not switch. Okay, he did not become a Republican. Instead, he stayed with the Democrat Party and became a senator. Okay, some people probably who are watching this might be saying right now that hey, there's a switch, but there's no switch at all. The switch is again a psychopathic attempt by Democrats to project their own racist history and vileness and evil on their opponents, their political opponents, the GOP. So, you know, I'm an atheist. I'm not just an anti-PC Asian, but I'm also an atheist. So you must be thinking that how can you be an atheist and be a supporter of the GOP? So I don't care about parties, you know. I don't care about parties. I care about ideas. So Joe Biden, an unabashed racist, a pedophile, a child molester, you know, he became the president, a puppet in the United States because of fraud. Okay, fraud is what made him win the election.
He came for his rescue. It's over.
It took 100 stitches to close the facial wound,
Wow,
and as
100
Quintana
stitches.
continues to recover, he admitted that this is not the first time he was violently attacked in New York City.
Not the first time in New York City, not the first time. Mind you, it's New York City, one of the most liberal cities in America. Alright? They've been voting for Democrats for years, except, you know, during the term of Rudy Giuliani. Okay? But these, or others, but New York is definitely a liberal state.
That was 2 years ago. I was punched when I was walking after my working in Harlem.
The New York City Police Department described the assailant as a 20 to 30-year-old
20 to 30-year-old black thug. Okay? Black thug.
male with black afro-style hair.
Okay, it's good that in this report, because it's ABS-CBN, but nobody, not the fake news liberal media in the United States would dare say that they would not dare, you know, describe the attacker. They're not gonna do that because the attacker is a black guy, and this is an ABS-CBN news, you know, story. Okay, so let's look at. We're gonna check on the comments later on.
Was last seen wearing a black North Face jacket, red hoodie, blue jeans, red bandana, light collar sneakers, and a brown Louis Vuitton face mask.
Louis Vuitton
Anyone with
face
information about the incident may
Probably
call
fake.
NYPD's.
Alright, so again, if you notice, this Filipino reporter from ABS-CBN mentioned the attacker's race or skin color, but no American fake news media reporter would ever mention the race or ethnicity of the attacker. Because if they're gonna do that, they're gonna get fired. They're gonna get canceled. So cancel culture is one of the weapons or one of the tactics under the umbrella of political correctness in America. I forgot to mention that, by the way. So, okay, so if you're gonna check on the comments, get the attacker and let him rot. And so these are the comments if you're gonna check. Okay, so that's one Asian or Filipino American elderly who was attacked by a black man in a liberal city in America. So let's check on other videos because there's also this Asian woman who turned out to be a Filipino American, okay, who was attacked brutally again by the same race, by the same group of attackers.
Report anti-Asian bias. Few cities have been spared the violence, but data shows spikes in Boston, Philly, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Phoenix, and the worst of it all, in New York. From 3 Asian...
This is, by the way, a liberal TV network. Okay. This guy's name is Smith, Jeff Smith, I believe. I forgot the name. He is an unabashed liberal and Democrat reporter.
Crimes in 2019 to 28 last year, and already 33 this year.
In 2021.
We're about to show the latest attack, but a warning to you now, it is difficult to watch.
Just
Police say a
observe.
65-year-old woman was walking to church when a man...
This 65-year-old woman is, again, a Filipina American. She was attacked by a man while walking to her church in New York. Again, in New York. And we're gonna check whether this reporter, liberal and Democrat reporter, is going to mention the attacker's race or skin color.
Punched and kicked her while shouting anti-Asian slurs. This is Midtown Manhattan. You can see the
Midtown
attacker
Manhattan.
stomping on the woman's upper body and head 3 times after she fell onto the sidewalk. A security guard watched.
Imagine kicking. You know, all of us have grandparents, I believe, right? I have a 91-year-old grandparent. And imagine her walking to the church, okay? Naglalakad siya papuntang church. On her way to the church and alone. And suddenly, someone is gonna kick him in the head 3 times, probably in other body parts, but you know, a big guy kicking an elderly woman in broad daylight, and nobody helped her. Okay, so this is the trend. Nobody helped her. Okay, Asian attacked by a black man, a big black man, fully grown black man in a solid Democrat liberal city and state. And fourth, nobody helped the victim. No, that's a trend. 4 trends. Okay, and this has been consistent so far.
Whole time, and then more show up. None stop the...
Look at these 2 security guards. They are blacks as well. They are blacks.
Not one. No one helped the woman.
No one helped the woman.
One even appeared to close the door on her. Officials say
They closed the door. They shut the door off. They didn't want to intervene. And I'm gonna tell you my theories as to why nobody wanted to help these helpless Asian victims by black thug attackers. Okay.
took the woman to a hospital with a broken pelvis. She's now listed in stable condition. NBC's Jolene Kent now. Joe, again, these
is
attacks
revolting.
we're seeing over and over now.
We are, Shep. Good evening. Officials say the woman who was so brutally beaten in that video has just been released.
These are hypocrites, really. The fake news media, because they are part of the problem. And I'm gonna be discussing as to why the hell what are the reasons why nobody would like to help these Asian victims. And the media in the United States are culpable. They are part of the perpetrators. They are accomplice to the crime. And then now they're trying to play, the sympathy card that, I sympathize with them and they are part of the problem.
Covering their unstable condition. Now, the New York City Hate Crimes Task Force is now investigating the incident, and there has been no arrest of the suspect.
Of course, no arrest of the suspect. He's black. You're not supposed to arrest a black guy. Remember the George Floyd case. Okay? That's part of the reasons why nobody would like to stop a black attacker. And I'm gonna talk about that after this.
Closely at that video, you'll see that
This
the
is the
individuals
attacker.
inside of the lobby of that Manhattan luxury apartment complex watching and doing nothing. Now, building management says they've been suspended
Revolting.
pending an investigation. So that lack of action has been captured.
Aren't liberals and Democrats supposed to be for the minorities, for Asians? What happened?
Cameron,
What
it has
happened?
Asian American activists like Amanda Wen speaking out.
So basically, after the trial of Derek Chauvin, what's next? Okay, what's next is black thugs are gonna continue attacking Asians, and these American liberals, the fake news, aren't gonna do anything about it. They're not gonna do anything. They're simply gonna bring their placard, would say or show, stop anti-Asian hate. But that is manipulative. That is evil. Okay, because these American Democrats and liberals, they've caused this anti-Asian culture and climate in America. They are the reason why Asians are suffering, and they've been doing this for years. This is not just a modern day scenario. They've been doing this for years. Remember the LA riots, okay? The Los Angeles riots against Asians, fanned and incited by Nancy Waters. It's Maxine Waters, okay? Remember I mentioned the name Maxine Waters earlier? Okay, this politician, Democrat Congresswoman in California, she's been inciting blacks. She's been using blacks to achieve political power for decades. And she's the one who incited blacks against Asians and Koreans in 1992 during the LA riots. Alright? They've been doing this for decades and years. And this is not, a recent scenario in America.
It is a fundamental betrayal of what it means to be an American if people do not stand up in the face of hate right now.
Nguyen or Wen, this is a Vietnamese last name, and it's good to see that the Vietnamese have awakened, and most of them voted for Donald Trump. Asians should start voting for Republicans. Okay, despite your religiosity, despite your atheism, you need to vote for Republicans because, the Democrats are evil. It's a choice between evil and monsters. Okay, it's not to excuse the crimes, whatever the crimes that Republican governments committed in the past, but today the DNC is a global evil. Okay, they are a global evil that they need to be voted out. Okay, not just by blacks, of course, but also by Asians, because these two these two minority groups, blacks and Asians, they're being used by Democrats for decades.
I see videos of people who are harassed,
And you do nothing. In New York, you do nothing. So that's the problem. So let's continue
An
with this
Asian
video.
American viciously beaten on a New York City subway. NYPD officials say they're still investigating whether it's a hate crime. A warning now.
Whether
The
it's a
video
hate
we're
crime.
about to show
It's
is
a crime,
graphic
whatever the
and
crime that is. It's
Local coverage
hate
from
crime.
NBC4 New
Okay?
York and reporter
To
Eric
call it hate crime is redundant. Every crime is
The J train
because of
meeting is
hate.
brutal. Fists flew both ways until they didn't. Eventually, an Asian man passes out.
Another Asian man attacked by a black man in broad daylight in public. Again, the
getting
trend.
punched, choked.
It makes you think twice about taking the
And
train.
nobody helped.
The
Nobody
NYPD's hate crimes
would
task
like to
force
help
is reviewing
Asian
working
victims.
to learn when this happened, what prompted it, and who this man is. Last seen walking off the train in Brooklyn
Revolting.
at the Kosciuszko Street Station.
Disappointing. It's evil.
intervention trainings.
It was several miles away in Bensonhurst where that came up.
Again, New York. I forgot to mention that. Okay, a black attacker versus Asian victim in New York in broad daylight, and nobody would like to help.
Community activists on hand to support two women who believe that attackers spit on them because they're Asian.
And now these morons, these useful idiots, these corrupt Democrat politicians in New York are now trying to play the, I feel for you guys. They're trying to play that card when they don't care at all.
Right now, to me, and then fall on my face here. And I said, excuse me. Then I didn't look back.
He didn't attack anyone. He could have fought back.
These
and
are
I believe
Vietnamese.
there's a reason for that. 16-year-old Vanessa Lam says that mid-March day, she also got pushed.
Okay, I mentioned earlier, I forget about Shepard Smith, because I've shown you the footages earlier by this Shepard Smith's show. Nobody, not even Shepard Smith and these reporters who appear to be Asian, none of them mentioned the attacker's race, ethnicity, or skin color.
Witness saw and helped.
How manipulative.
If we don't speak up, people
This-
will be emboldened to do these senseless acts. We
Unbelievable.
need good neighbors
Incredible.
Monday, several lawmakers committed
And
to find funds.
none of these politicians, none of these teary-eyed activists would like to mention the attacker's race or skin color.
Before that, convinced that's part of the
That's
way.
part of political correctness. You're not supposed, if you happen to understand or study the PC culture or politics in America and in the West, you're not supposed to mention the attacker's race or ethnicity if his or she is black. But if she's white, if the attacker is white, then go for it. You can have your field day. But no, if the attacker is black, PC culture, never mention the attacker's race if the attacker is black.
New York City must tackle this issue, especially given what
Tackle.
happened on that J train.
It's like trying to fight an enemy without identifying who the enemy is. Alright? Remember Barack Obama? Who cannot mention or identify the terrorists as Islamic terrorists? And Donald Trump was brave enough, he was anti-PC enough to mention or to utter the terms, radical Islamic terrorism. Okay? If you cannot identify your enemy, you cannot win the war. That's law logic. Okay, let's proceed to this other video.
For a family that's been in the beauty supply business for 10 years, what cameras caught happening inside their North Houston Uptown Beauty Supply store on Kirkendall on March 17th was hard to stomach.
First time here.
The store's owner, Jung Kim, was assaulted, punched in the face, but it's what she says they said in the process that caught her off guard.
You Asian? Chinese pop?
She says there were 5 women who came into the store and claims they knocked over some wigs.
5 women. And again, notice the trend. This liberal fake news reporter is so afraid to identify the attacker's race or skin color.
He asked them not to play around, and on the way out, her son claims he heard them say this.
Asian people should be in the black market. Like, we're not selling like wigs or something like that because we're the Asian. That's what they're saying.
Less than a minute later, the women came back, and that's when the punches started flying, and his mother knocked to the floor. Now 2 of the women are arrested. 22-year-old Daquisha Williams.
This time, somebody tried to stop the attackers because these are all Asians. Asians tend to help each other. I don't know about the subway attack, okay, if there were Asians. But this one,
with assault,
this is a predominantly Asian place, okay,
24-year-old
owned by an
Keandra
Asian
Young, charged with
store
aggravated
owner.
assault for trying to run them over in the parking lot.
I am not sure it's racial motivated, but one thing I can tell, always like, no matter what, like racial or anti-Asian or like the racism, no matter what, the violence is not alright.
We checked with Houston police and the DA. Neither agent.
I love this comment from this guy. Few months ago, they said Black Lives Matter. And remember the audacity, the manipulative behavior, the psychopath behavior of this black and white liberals. So if you're gonna say Asian Lives Matter, if it were a few months ago, like last year, if you're gonna say Asian Lives Matter, they're gonna call you racist. They're gonna call you racist because you're not supposed to say Asian Lives Matter or All Lives Matter, because according to their worldview, these manipulative, evil, psychopathic liberals, especially the white Democrats and liberals, according to them, only Black Lives Matter. Okay, if you don't believe that Black Lives Matter, you're racist. They've been saying that for months into the election and into 2020.
He is calling this.
So it's really revolting what they're doing, and this one again as well.
Disgusting. I don't think that there ever been.
Oh my God. Not felt since the Japanese American internment camps during.
I'm gonna include the trend. So the trend is again a black attacker with Asian victim in broad daylight in liberal America. No one would like to help, and reporters and the fake news media in America refuse to identify the attacker's skin color, ethnicity, or race. Because why? Political correctness.
War II. High unemployment and boycotts of businesses have ravaged their communities. As Wisha Zhang reports, there is also a disturbing trend of racist attacks. Oh my God.
These are the kinds of attacks Asian Americans have faced this year.
Every disease has ever came from China. Everything comes from China. It's f***ing disgusting.
I don't think that there had ever been a time where I was scared or fearful of my life because of my race.
26-year-old Victor Yang says he will never forget that day in March when a bike ride with his girlfriend on these familiar Maryland trails ended with a frantic call for help.
DC 911.
Hi, right now I'm on the bike trail. I've had the kids chasing us going off.
What was shocking was these individuals kept on falling.
Imagine biking and someone is throwing rocks at you because you're an Asian. Alright? You're an Asian in a liberal and Democrat city or state. And the attacker is a black guy.
Taunting us, saying, coronavirus, COVID-19.
What happened to Yang is one of over 2,800 hate incidents reported against Asian Americans across the country since the pandemic started 7 months ago. A nearly 845% increase compared to all the reported cases in the last 3 years combined.
Asian American hate is as old as American.
This guy is a moron, He's a liberal
actor and
I don't believe this guy is a hypocrite.
4 years old when
he's a hypocrite. He may be a popular actor from Japan, but
this country was
he's part of the problem. He's part of the liberal problem in America. Okay, and as what CNN would say, the leak or release footage of CNN by Project Veritas exposing CNN bias, okay? And they were exposing this CNN executive or news director who said that, we're simply gonna include people who's gonna say things that we want people to hear. And this is exactly the reason why this Japanese actor was included by this fake news artist, because the news reporter knows that this guy is going to say things that is going to be favorable or in favor of the liberal agenda. So let's leave this stupid moron. I cannot even because he's nothing but an anti-Trump lunatic. Okay, he's part of American Hollywood pedophile movement, because a lot of white liberals in Hollywood are pedophile. Okay, they hate Trump basically, and this is just my theory. Why the hell American Hollywood actors, directors, and people hate Trump with a passion after he became president? Because prior to him becoming president, they loved him. Because after Trump became president, after he became the commander-in-chief in America, Hollywood hated him with passion. Why? My theory is, Hollywood is full of pedophiles. Okay, Chrissy Teigen, for example, that model, and others. Okay, these are pedophiles, and Trump stopped the supply of kid or children migrants to America. These child migrants in America are good farm supply for Hollywood pedophiles, Hollywood white liberal pedophiles. So let's get to the next video.
Passengers on a Manhattan-bound J train stunned as an Asian man gets hit repeatedly, then choked.
Oh, this is not right.
It's crazy,
Okay, that's another one.
San Francisco business caught on
In San Francisco, California, one of the bluest cities. It's gonna rival New York, okay, as the bluest city in America.
flashing his gun. It's video you'll see only on ABC7. Tonight, he explains why he's taking matters into his own hands to defend Chinatown. Good evening, and thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dion Lim. That dramatic video is from outside the Golden Gate Fortune Cookie Factory. I spoke exclusively to the co-owner tonight.
The guy just pushed like this real quick. He did the first push real hard.
This brazen daytime assault happened Saturday afternoon
All
outside
done in
Chinatown's
daytime.
iconic Golden Gate Fortune Cookie Factory, where the man in the black sweatshirt singles out one of about a dozen tourists and attacks. We blurred the man's face because he has not been arrested.
The guy asked the black guy why he pushed me. He said, "Oh, because."
Even this Asian reporter is afraid to identify the attacker's race or skin color. Again,
2 blocks away.
because
What
of
makes this
political
story remarkable
correctness.
is what unfolds next. Co-owner of the factory, Kevin Chan, seen in the gray sweatshirt with green sleeves, immediately steps in and lifts up his shirt to reveal
I have a concealed carry that needs to protect my business.
just the sight of it is enough for the man in the black sweatshirt to leave.
Because he's kind of scared too, so he don't want to.
Just notice or observe that the Asian guys in that place in this video are afraid. They're afraid to interfere. They would like to interfere. They would like to stop the guy, but it's America, and it's the bluest city in California, San Francisco, and they don't want to stop.
Tourism in Chinatown was
they're
down
afraid to stop the
35%
black
before
attacker.
the pandemic. Once COVID hit, business went down for some as much as 90%.
Where you guys come from?
While some tourists are coming back, as we witnessed Sunday night.
This is the original machine.
Okay, we're gonna discuss why the hell, they are afraid or they were afraid to stop black guys. It's either they're afraid, they're actually afraid, or they just don't care.
Crime Stoppers hotline at
Fortune cookies. They are 1956.
Kevin can't afford for incidents like this to scare visitors away.
You think the people come? They will have that impression. They will blame it in the Chinese community.
Kevin decided not to file a police report, afraid it would go nowhere.
Alright, so we've seen enough so far about anti-Asian climate in America. So if you notice, I kept repeating the trend that there is always one group of attacker, okay, black attackers with Asian victims in broad daylight in solid Democrat cities and states, and nobody helped. Nobody would like to help. It's either they don't care or they're afraid. And 5, the fake news media refuse to identify the attacker's race or identity or skin color, ethnicity. Why? There's only one reason: because of political correctness. So I started this vlog by saying that I will be changing my channel name to Anti-PC Asian. I gave you the definition and my understanding of political correctness. Political correctness is American and Western liberals' the best cultural weapon. And under the arsenal of political correctness, they have cancel culture, they have Me Too movement, they have gender politics, they have critical race theory. These are all weapons in the arsenal of political correctness. These are all tactics that they use in order to silence people, in order to silence their critics, and to defeat their political opponents. Cancel culture is the best tactic so far under the umbrella of political correctness. Why? Because we all know that American Democrats and liberals are so adept at exploiting people's emotion, race, and culture. Okay? They are expert in gaslighting. If they can gaslight a nation, they can gaslight the whole world. And that's what they're doing with this presidency of creepy Joe Biden. So this time we will be I'll be identifying why the hell nobody would like to help. So I prepared this list. So I'll be discussing them one by one. So the main reason is, again, political correctness, but there are sub-categories or sub-reasons as to why nobody would like to help Asians. So one of them is American Democrats and liberals' race-based rhetoric and policies. Okay? We all know that American Democrats and liberals are so obsessed with race, and that's the reason why they are using blocks in order to win elections. Okay, race-based politics. And in this race-based politics, Asian is one of their main victims. So part of which is affirmative action. Affirmative action. Okay? There is systemic racism in America. And we've seen so far how American politicians and fake news, American politicians like AOC or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Pelosi, Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, were claiming that there is systemic racism. And in fact, Vice President Kamala Harris just said just a few hours ago, after the guilty verdict against Derek Chauvin, that there is systemic racism in America, because there is actually systemic racism in America, and that is racism implemented and being perpetrated by American Democrats and liberals. The problem is American GOP and Republicans don't know how to answer or how to rebut these libelous accusations by American Democrats. When American Democrats claim that there is systemic racism in America, what do these Republicans do? They are going to answer like they're being attacked. They are being so defensive. Because if they know what they're doing, I would tell these liberals that yes, there is systemic racism in America, and that is racism being implemented and perpetrated by you. One of the examples of systemic racism by American Democrats and liberals is affirmative action. Okay? Affirmative action. A lot of Democrats don't know this because, your regular Democrat voter or liberal would simply know nothing. Okay? Because if they did their research, they would find out that affirmative action is a manipulative, deceptive policy being implemented and championed by American Democrats and liberals in order to attract black votes. But while they're trying to attract black votes, they're trying to victimize Asians. Because affirmative action is racist and discriminatory against Asians. Okay, if you happen to have been familiar with the case filed by Asian groups against Harvard University. So Harvard University and these Ivy League schools, New York University, Yale, they've been discriminating against Asians in college entrance admission tests for admission. So this is what this American senator is discussing in this speech, okay? That Joe Biden dropped Joe Biden DOJ or Department of Justice dropped this
glass pyramid was
Asian
actually
group's
an American.
case against Harvard for trying to
He was an
discriminate
Asian
against
American.
Asians in college
His name
entrance
was I.M.
examinations.
Pei.
But that's going to be another story. Our second reason is the George Floyd effect. So why is it that if you've seen the video that I've shown you so far, you notice or you observe that nobody would like to help these Asians, the elderly woman walking to her charge. Okay, the two security guards shut the door. They didn't want to interfere. And Mr. Quintana, the Filipino American, said, I screamed help, but nobody helped me. Why? It's because of the George Floyd effect. And not just George Floyd, but also the Trayvon case. Okay, if you happen to have been familiar with the Zimmerman case, I think Martin Trayvon is a name, who Barack Obama said could have been my son. Okay, because if you're gonna try to help Asians and try to stop the black attacker, what's gonna happen next? They're gonna try to fight you. They're gonna beat you as well. The black attacker is going to divert his attention on you, and it's going to create a commotion. You'd end up fighting, and it's either, if you're fortunate enough, it's either you're able to subdue or to stop the guy or the black attacker, or you're gonna kill him. And if you're gonna kill him in the process or hurt him, the media, the fake news media, the liberal fake news media in America are going to accuse you of being racist. They're gonna try to paint you as white like they did to Zimmerman. Okay, I forget the name, the full name of Zimmerman. Okay, let me just make sure this, but I can definitely remember the case of Trayvon versus Zimmerman. Okay, so what CNN did is they tried to paint, Trayvon Martin actually. I switched the name. So Trayvon Martin versus George Zimmerman. George Zimmerman is a Hispanic. So imagine what they can do to you if you're gonna try to stop a black guy, right? They're gonna try to destroy your life. That's the reason why nobody, it's either they are afraid to help or they just don't care. That's the climate or the culture that American white liberals have created so far in most liberal cities and states. So nobody would like to stop a black guy because of fear of being accused of racism, right? Who would do that? Okay, George Floyd effect. Okay, so you're on your own. If you're an Asian and you're in a Democrat city or state, you're on your own. If a black guy is going to hit you or try to kill you, you're definitely gonna die. It's either you're gonna have your limbs and pelvis injured, or your face knifed, and nobody's gonna help you. You're on your own because of this climate or culture created by American Democrats and liberals in their attempt to keep their stay in power. These people are power lusters, okay? These people are corrupt. These people are evil. I'm referring to the white liberals and Democrats in America, the white Democrats like Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, okay, Hillary Clinton, and many others. And my third theory is American Democrats and liberals have been historically racist and discriminatory against Asians. So I mentioned the case of Maxine Waters, for example. So do you happen to know or to have heard the LA riots in 1992? So the LA riots is, again, like the George Floyd riots in the United States last year, was fanned and incited by American Democrats in California prior to the 1992 election. So it's always an election year. So do you now understand clearly the trend? So imagine the George Floyd case was fanned and exaggerated and incited by American Democrats months before the 2020 election. It was months before the 2020 election. They had to do it, and we all know, if you did your research, George Floyd was a hardened criminal. He didn't just do the crime once. He's been a criminal all his life. And they had to create a crisis out of George Floyd's death. Okay, and the death, if you've seen the video, it was justified. Except that the jury in Minneapolis, Minnesota were afraid. The jury members, they were afraid of the riots because the day before they laid down the verdict, okay, against Derek Chauvin being guilty on all charges. Maxine Waters, the riot queen in America, threatened war or confrontation in the streets. Okay, so they were threatened, the jury members, and the judge of that case lambasted Maxine Waters for her threats. Okay, so they've been doing this for decades. So here is Maxine Waters. What I'm gonna show you is a video of Maxine Waters, again, America's most psychopathic riot queen, inciting riots against Asians in 1992. She incited riots against Asians. So she's like treating these black people as cattle, as her own property. So she was a congresswoman that year. And in America, they don't have term limits. So let's watch the video. So this is again Maxine Waters. Okay, that was 1992 in LA, who was in the process of turning into a liberal utopia from a Republican city and state to a Democrat state. That's how they achieved power in California, through race wars. Don't start any riot yet. Will you work with me? I mean, this woman, this evil creature, is worse than any Filipino politician in the Philippines, really. So this is the aftermath of the riot incited by Maxine Waters and her fellow Democrats in California. Asians and Koreans' properties were destroyed. So you really think that the burning of cities in Portland, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, in Kenosha were a recent phenomenon by blacks, and they were incited by the same Democrat politicians in America? No, if you think that, you're stupid. The Democrats have been doing this for decades, and their main victims, okay, their primary victims are Asians. Only recently that they're turning to white people as their new victims, okay, with the invention of the critical race theory. Okay, so these politicians are so evil, but they're so smart
I
as
don't care
well.
what the race is, I don't care anything, but it's not right, okay? It's not right to break inside and get any stuff, you know? It's not right. I don't think it's right.
He and Lee spent last night and will spend.
I don't care about your race. I don't care about your race. That's what he said, because basically he knew that the attackers were black, and there was a stand down. Nobody tried to help them. If you're gonna continue with this video,
Then tonight, guarding his
there
appliance
was a
store.
stand
A
down
small battalion of
to
employees and
men
relatives will try to help.
laid down by
I only
the.
have one shotgun. That's all I have.
They were abandoned.
What do they have?
This guy is saying, this Korean guy was saying that the city government and the state government abandoned them. The same stand down order that these liberal cities, Democrat cities, and in America exactly did recently. There was a stand down. That's the reason why Florida, the state of Florida, just passed this anti-riot bill, not just to deter, to stop riots from happening in Florida, but also to make these politicians who's gonna order stand down liable and culpable. They're gonna be liable for any damage to property that riots are gonna cause. That should be the case. If your Democrat politician is gonna order stand down, that they're gonna order that the police is not gonna interfere, then these politicians should be held liable, right?
They have hundreds of crazy people, hundreds of crazy young people with lots of guns.
After the destruction, many Koreans have lost all faith that the authorities can protect them.
There's a man out here who says we're all trained to shoot. Why? What's the feel? Well, see, we have no hatred towards black people. We have nothing against anybody. All we wanted to do is work hard.
Observe the questioning of the media. The media was part of this as well. It was part of the discrimination and racism, the liberal media against Asians and Koreans. They were totally abandoned, not just by the government and police, but also by the media.
How to make it like the rest of us, and we know. But people are driving by, shooting at us, and we have to do something about it. There's no police support whatsoever.
And I couldn't just believe why the hell, despite all this racism, despite all these anti-Asian riots and hate, racism, discrimination committed and perpetrated by American black and white liberals against Asian, I couldn't believe that Asians still vote for Democrats. They're voting for the same people who abandoned them. If that is not useful idiocy, I don't know what is. I don't know what is. And another reason, okay, the fourth one is the liberal or Democrat policy of defunding the police. So, Joe Biden, for example, Kamala Harris supported defunding the police. So what they're gonna do, okay? Defunding the police really had an impact on anti-Asian
Give my son Sebi
climate
vitaminized
in America. So all of this combined with the fact that there is anti-Asian climate or policies implemented by American liberals in America,
Yes, that's right, Matt.
it's no wonder that we're now seeing, the rise of anti-Asian hate and crimes by blacks in the United States, really. And of course, Democrat states freeing criminals. According to New York and California, they freed criminals because of COVID, according to them, while trying to arrest people for not wearing masks. Imagine the stupidity. They're trying to free criminals, and we don't know if those same, black thugs were the very same people freed by Governor Cuomo in California. We don't know. We need, the media should check on that, right? Were the attackers of Mr. Quintana and the Filipino, the 65-year-old Filipino in Manhattan, were they freed, black criminals freed by Governor Cuomo because of COVID? Probably. And that led to the rise of anti-Asian crimes in America and many Democrat cities and states in America, because the Democrat cities and states let criminals go. The stupidity. And of course, Democrat cities and states police stand down policy. And lastly, I actually mentioned this already, the stand down order by Democrat governments across America. So for fear of being accused of racism, these Democrat politicians do not want to intervene. Okay, they ordered stand down. They don't want to have police interfere, and that is evil. That is really, really unfortunate, because their idiocy and stupidity victimizes Asians. And if you like this video, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And this is again Anti-PC Asian Vlog. Have a good one to all of you.